okay? Now, let's apply now what we've just learnt, and we're gonna put it into practice. I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of each of the 3 types of warm-up. And what we're gonna do is this. I'm gonna write down all the main movements. Here we go, main movements. And I'm gonna walk you through the process that I would consider for these things. So our main movements is push, pull, plank. We have our squat, our hinge, and we have our lunge, and we have our ground to standing, our gait, which is walking or running, or the space between feet during movement, and our crawl. Now team, notice that I pair these together in pairs of 3 usually, mainly because they're usually the ones we see that marry well together. There is no reason you can't do a session that's built around every single one of them. I've just found in my experience that push, pull, and plank usually lives together, squat, hinge, and lunge usually lives together, and ground to standing, gait, and crawl, since they're weird, for lack of a better word, they make more transverse, more sport specific, more functional longevity, farmer strong, I'd pair them together as well. So let's do a 2-step, and we're gonna do a 2-step for each of these. 2-step, 2-step, 2-step. We're gonna do a 2-step for our push, pull, plank. We're gonna do a 2-step for our squat, hinge, and lunge, and then a 2-step for our ground to standing, our gait, and our crawl. So let's do our push, pull, lunge first. Let's do this one first. So let's think now, our main goal, our 4 steps on the side here is identify the main movements, which we now know is push, pull, or plank. Move. We're thinking about what's the main joints being used, which we know is our ankles, our knees, our hips, our spine, our shoulders, our elbows, and our wrists. We are looking at the muscles above and below, and we are looking to loosen the tight shit and tighten the loose shit. Those are our 4 behind the scenes things that I'm always thinking about. So in the case of push, pull, plank, I'm gonna go for my 2-step. I'm gonna let's loosen the tight shit. So I know that the movements of the day is push. So let's say it's a push-pull day. So they're doing a lot of bench press and a lot of pull-ups and all those things, the fun stuff. The main joint of the push, let's just call it the elbow. Why? Because the elbow is doing both pushing and pulling, okay? So we're doing a lot of work in this space. The muscles above and below are smaller than the muscles of the back, so they're probably gonna cop a lot more damage. So things to consider when you're a PT. Now, with the muscles that I'm concerned at is the biceps, the triceps, the forearm, the shoulder, things that are above and things that are below, and I'm gonna loosen them. So I might think to myself, I'm doing a lot of bicep tricep work today in the pull-ups and the push-ups, as well as tricep dips and et cetera, et cetera. So I might foam roll triceps or bis or both, depends on what kind of time I have. In this case, 2 steps built for shorter space. So we're gonna do 2-step. So let's loosen the tight shit. Let's loosen we'll foam roll the tricep, we'll foam roll the bicep. You could voodoo floss, which I refer to a lot. I will do a video on how to voodoo floss at a later date. We can also just do some stretching. That's totally fine. We can do some bicep or tricep related stretching. Now, let's think of a cardio movement that will help us with push, okay? Push is our goal here. No, we can have pull as well. It doesn't matter, but let's just focus on push. So they could be doing bench press, they could be doing push-ups, they could be doing ball throws, they could be doing overhead press. It doesn't necessarily matter. But when you think of a cardio machine, which one do you think is most appropriate for pushing, or is involving the upper body, shoulders, biceps, triceps, chest, upper back, those kind of things? I would be thinking more towards my ski ergs. I might be thinking towards my kettlebell overhead press, light for 3 minutes. I might be thinking of my row machine, whatever. When we get more specific into what specific exercise are you doing, let's say the focus of the day is to do lat pull downs, that's something you're working with the swimmer on or whatever, you might focus more perhaps on the row machine than the ski erg, or you might do, if you're doing a kettlebell athlete, you might be looking at kettlebells, whatever. And we might do that for 3 to 5 minutes. So that is a completely appropriate warm-up for a client generically who doesn't have a lot of time when we're doing a push day that's arm focused, or it actually doesn't even necessarily need to be arm focused. That's a very quick and easy little warm up you can do for a push-pull plank day, with the focus there being push. You could make it a plank, you would just slightly change stuff. You could do a warm up of planking, who would have thought? But yes, loose and tight shit, move the body in a cardio setting. So let's do our squat lunge hinge. We kind of touched on it, so we're just gonna quickly and smash through it, thinking about what joint's doing what. Let's think about, in this case, the hinge, because we haven't talked a lot about it. So hinge is like deadlifts, stuff where your legs are staying more or less straight and your hips are moving instead. Great movement. You are sometimes gonna have a little bit of squat in a hinge movement. So a traditional deadlift is both squat and hinge, but in this case, we're just gonna call it a hinge because it's mainly a hinge movement, although yes, I understand that there's a bit of squatting in there. So what is the main movement? Is hinge. What are the joints? Well, let's call it the hip, shall we? What muscles are around the hip? Well, we've got our glutes, we've got our hamstrings, our quads, our upper back, our abdominis rectus, so our abs, all those fun stuff. Let's just go glutes because it's a nice big muscle mass group and we can see it. You can even do like the TFL or the stuff in front of the body. Quads are a great one to release for hips. You'll find out in your journey, like I much have, that quads are often tight. That's cool. So let's call glutes. Let's do some foam rolling on the glutes. You could do some pressure point ball release. So you get a little cricket ball and actually put it into the glute itself. We could do some stretching of the glute, whatever. Okay, now we're gonna do our cardio movement. So for a hinge, what do you think is probably the best thing? So body, legs straight, body moving up and down. I would think about a light kettlebell swing perhaps for 3 minutes or 5 minutes. I might even do a row machine. Team, again, I'm gonna emphasize, this is generic. I'm not writing you a dead set, super impressive program. I'm giving you concepts around how I would write a warm up around a program. So, you know, you can take these to the bank if you want, but just keep in mind, this is generic. There is no one client in mind. This is just how to use these warm ups yourself. I will be providing in the future hundreds of examples for many different types of clients that you can just use. But for now, let's just keep in mind that caveat that this is all just generic. This is no one specific in mind. Let's think about our gait, crawl, and hinge. Our great crawl and ground to standing. These things, again, very sport specific. Jiu-jitsu, for example, loves a good crawl and a ground to standing. Running or sprinting really likes gait. Common one probably is gait, is the one I see a lot, just because people love to run. That's great. It's a very cheap and effective exercise. So when we're thinking about our main movement, our joints, our muscles loosening and tightening, my main movement is gait. For those who don't know what gait is, that's okay. It just means space between feet as you're moving. So it's just, well, in this context it is, we're just describing people's steps, running or walking, or space between where the heel touches to the toe and goes through its full cycle of a step again. That's what we're referring to when we talk about gait. Okay, now for gait, the main joint is the ankle. Crazy, who would have thought? The main muscles, above and below, there are muscles in the feet, but we're way too difficult to dive into them. We're far more focused on the muscles above, which in this case is the calf. Okay, so let's loosen the tight shit, or tighten the loose shit. In this case, we're gonna loosen stuff because it's always easier to loosen than it is to tighten, and it's far more in your scope of practice. So our first movement, we're gonna loosen tight stuff. Let's do some foam rolling of the calf. Let's do some voodoo flossing of the calf, which is particularly effective. It's probably my favorite one. We can do some pressure point ball, pressure point, We can do some stretching, whatever, dynamic or static, your preference as a coach. Whatever makes the client feel good. Who would have thought? Then we're gonna do a main movement that's cardio around gait. Can you think of something that's walking or running related that's cardio based? Probably gonna be walking or running. So just get the client to walk and or jog for 3 minutes. That's cool, that's totally fine. One that I see some more advanced coaches do is they get the client to really slowly walk a sled, really getting the client to focus on the heel to toe and press. So super slow, trying to get as much length in the step as they can for 3 minutes, but there is no harm in you just doing a walk or a jog. No harm at all, totally fine. So that's a 2-step example for each push-pull plank and lunge. Let's have a look at a 4-step. Now, again, this is probably the more common one you'll see. It's probably the more common one that you guys yourselves will use. As you'll get better and better, I'm sure I'm gonna get a ton of comments and requests about 6 steps, how to do it and how well they find it works for their client. I love a good 6-step because as a coach, you end up training so often other people, you forget to train yourself. So you can get mobile very, very quickly if you jump into every client's 6-step with them. They usually like it because you can demonstrate, and it also helps them understand how long you would expect stuff to take. So I've very rarely had any complaints about jumping in with people's 6 steps. However you do run it past the client first. You know, we cannot assume anything in this industry.
Hey team, if you're liking this content, what I need you to do is follow us, support us, leave comments. We're here to help programmers be better at programming, make coaches and PTs the best of the best that we can, and it starts with programming and it starts with you. Share, like, subscribe.
4 steps. Remember that our 4 steps are loose and tight shit. Oh no, it's not. Thinking the other one. Linear, mobility, transverse, linear. So let's start with our push-pull plank. This time we're gonna do plank, because why not? So for my linear movement, the beautiful thing about plank is it's both a linear movement pattern as well as it is an exercise. So I might get them to hold a plank for anywhere between 30 and 60 seconds. Just nice and slow. I can do this in a circuit format. If it's a group, I can get them to do it as a client. I might get them to do it in sets, so I could get them to do 2 sets of this movement. Doesn't matter. I can either do it in a 7 to 11 minute circuit, or I can get them to go through 2 times individually. I could do it in sets, it doesn't matter, okay? So I've done a plank for my mobility, thinking about the planks really related to the core and particularly the spine. So I might get them to do some thread the needles, which is where you're in a knees down plank position, like this, and you reach under this way. Like you're trying to grab your keys out from under a couch. So you reach under the couch, try to grab your phone, and then you raise your hand up nice and tall to show the wife that it was there the whole time, which is what I usually say to clients, thinking about that external cueing, right? So reaching under the couch, grabbing your keys and reaching up to rotate the spine. I could give them a resistance band and get them to do some twisting. I could get them to do some hanging where I put them on a barbell, get them just nice and tall and let the spine elongate. That's totally fine as well. So in this case, we're gonna do spine. We're gonna do a hanging mobility. We're gonna do it 30 to 60 seconds as well. You could do it 2 sets, you could do it as a circuit, whatever. For your transverse movement, we could do exactly as we just kind of described, get a band and do some rotation work. We could get them to do some renegade rows, so they're holding a plank position and they turn and reach to the sky. Anything like that. As soon as they're in a plank position, you're laughing. You could do some TRX rows, so they're holding on to a TRX with their hands, holding on nice and long, so they're holding that plank position, and then they could turn and twist themselves so they're nice and long. Anytime those hips and shoulders are not staying together, so the hip state might stay stagnant as they rotate, totally fine. Again, when in doubt, think about sports, okay? So jiu-jitsu is very plank and rotation heavy, so you could even, for example, get them to do a common thing you see in jiu-jitsu, like a Turkish get-up or a Russian twist, but keeping it playful. So we might call it a Russian twist, as most people know what that is. It's when you sit in a V shape and hold the ball and rotate it left to right. We might do that for 30 to 60 seconds. And then we bring it back home to a linear. So we could just do like an inchworm, or we could do push-ups because you're still in that plank position, whatever, okay? There you go, there's one 4-step warm-up for a circuit, a group, an individual that's gonna last you through push-pull plank. And you'll probably notice, team, a lot of the stuff has pushing and pulling in it. So planking has almost like a push movement to get in and out of it anyway. So some things cross wires, and that's why you can quite easily do a whole day with all 9 movement patterns in them when you're writing programs. For me, I like to keep them separate and then have one, maybe one day a week where I put all 4 in. Just depends on what the client needs, and depends on your skill set as a coach as well. Again, team, it's okay if you don't remember all this stuff. These are just examples. You can take them and use them if you want for the generic client, but I don't expect you to understand this. I'm just giving you some context around the steps. The best thing to do is write these 3 different forms of warm-ups yourself and write 100 of each, and then you'll be pretty good at it by then. Let's do our squat, hinge, lunge. We haven't done lunge yet, so let's do lunge. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So first things first is a linear movement. I'm gonna make them do body weight lunges because that's the main thing of the day. Crazy thought. The mobility movement of the day. Again, the knee is very, very commonly used in the lunge. Being our main movement on this side is our lunge. Our main joint is our knee. Could be the hip as well or the ankle. Irrelevant, you could do hip if you like. Muscle is quads, hamstrings, calf, loosen, tighten. Let's loosen up the quads. Well, we're gonna give mobility around the joint. So we can do a kneeling hip stretch, where they've come down in like a lunge position, but the knees on the floor, and they just drive their hips forward. Thinking external cueing, I might say, imagine humping the air, so thrusting forward so they can create that nice length in the quad. Hip stretch or quad stretch, kneeling, very similar, doing similar muscles. Now I'm going to a transverse movement. In the lunge, I might get them to do a lateral lunge, which is just where they step to the side. My little man there's no good. Yeah. Terrible. They might do a lateral lunge where they instead of lunging forward, they lunge to the side, and they might do a rotation and a punch. They might do a curtsy lunge where they lunge behind themselves, lowering themselves to the ground. You could get them to do a lunge forward or a jump forward and a jump to the side. It doesn't matter. It's just as long as the shoulders and the hips are moving away from each other. Think sports. So in netball, they do a lot of lateral movements for lunging movements because they have to. They do a lot of sudden stops. So you might get the client, if it's a netball client, to step, pause and turn, or step, pause and turn, and you might clap for when the client needs to move. Stuff like that, keeping it fun, keeping it interesting. And finally, our normal linear movement. I might get them to do weighted lunge walking. I might get them to do kettlebell walks. I might get them to do overhead lunging. It doesn't matter. A lunge with a load perhaps, or just some form of lunging brought back home based off whatever your main plan was. If it's a sports specific lunge, sweet. If it's in the gym setting, which most of you guys were gonna be related around, we can do that as well. Just a weighted lunge, no problem. All right, let's smash this next one out because this video has gone far too long. But if you're still with me, team, the kind of stuff we're talking about now is how you become the 1% of the 1% coaches. This stuff you will not see in PT, and if you do, it's not very common. But when you can start writing programs with this in mind, you'll just crush it. You are gonna change the game, and you can start making some serious income as well as actually really helping people. It's a far more than you need than just your Cert 3, Cert 4, but there is such a deviation between the people who know this stuff and the people who don't that it's not even funny. Well, let's knock out a ground to standing really quick. Ground to standing is often transverse because it's a bit odd, but in this case, for our warm-up, let's do a burpee. Linear, it's a linear movement, or it can be a linear movement. For our mobility for a ground to standing, we might do a inchworm with a stretch. So they stand up nice and tall, lean forward, and try to walk themselves nice and long, stretching out their hamstrings. We could do something like thinking about grand standing, what's the main movement in the joints. Lots of joints are being used, but I'd probably say the spine. So I might do a thread the needle, or even the hips, because they're coming up and down a lot. So we'll do a thread the needle in this case, just to keep it simple, and we've used that example before. Our transverse movement, we could do a Turkish get-up, which is where you hold the kettlebell on your hand and you stand up. You could just do a back-lying ground to standing or back-lying burpee, where you lie on the floor and then twist to help yourself get up. That's transverse as it gets. Luckily, ground to standing is already a very transverse sports-related movement. And then bringing it back home to linear, we might do a deck squat. I could do this in a circuit for 7 to 11 minutes. I could do it individually in 10 reps or 20 reps or 2 sets of 10 reps or 5 reps. Doesn't matter, we're just trying to get the client warm. If we're trying to teach a client a new movement like a Turkish get-up, I might get them to do 1 or 2 movements or 1 or 2 reps or 1 to 5 reps, really get them to focus. If I'm trying to get their heart rate up because I'm having a high intensity day, I might get them to do this in a moderately fast circuit. Tons of options, team. Again, very generic, this programming. You don't need to worry about it too much. A basic understanding is going to serve you very well. I will be giving you hundreds of examples of real programs you can use at a later date anyway. They might already be out, who knows? Check out the channel and follow along the channel to see any of that kind of stuff. And we do have a big project coming out, so get excited for that. Let's finish off now with the 6-step team. 6-step is the best and by far my favorite. Again, I use it more for PTs. You can use it for, as in like one-to-one sessions. You absolutely can use it for group sessions if you want. So push, pull, plank, we've done, let's do pull. We've done the other ones kind of in excess already. So step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. The good thing is the more we're talking about this language, the more we're using this language, the more I show you this stuff, the quicker you're gonna be able to knock these out. Remember that it's linear, it's a loose and tight ship movement. That is the first thing, loose and tight. Then we're gonna go to linear. My writing's terrible at the minute and that's so fine. Mobility, you guys get the gist. Mobility again, some form of transverse, and then back to linear. That's our basic 6-step function, okay? 6 steps, that's what we're doing. Keep it simple. There are tons of 6 steps. I've seen 9 steps, I've seen 7 steps, I've seen 8 steps. 6 steps just works for me, nice and quick, gets rid of some of the fluff. So, loosen the tight shit in a pull. We go through our list. What's the main movement? It's a pull movement. The main joint of pulling is the shoulder, the wrist, and the elbow. We'll say shoulder in this case, just because we've used our hinge joint of our elbow a lot. So we'll say shoulder, which is a ball and socket joint for the anatomy nerds out there. The muscles of the shoulder is the front deltoid, the lateral deltoid, the rear deltoid, and then all the muscles of the back and the front. So above and below it, let's just say it is we'll just say the whole deltoid, so front, middle, and back. We'll then loosen that so we can do some basic stretching drills where we bring our arm across. We can have it overhead and pulling back if our client's having issue with overhead work. We can have a band getting pulled forward. Or even easier, let's just foam roll it. So let's foam roll the shoulder. Now, there is some controversy around foam rolling, particularly in the academic space. It makes the client feel good. It has some evidence of relieving tension as well as helping with movement. At the minute, I'd far rather you use it than not use it and wait for more science to come out. But at the minute, good to go. If you're apprehensive around using foam rolling, you can do voodoo flossing that has been proven to be heavily successful. And when in doubt, stretch it out. Nothing ever beats stretching. Very well proven, very heavily documented, and more text around that than you could ever want. So very easy to follow those lines. Linear, what's a pull movement? I might do a assisted pull-up. I might do, in case, if it's a big group, I might get people to do kettlebell pulls. I might get people to do resistant band pulls. What depends on the size. If it's a group, if it's a one-on-one, I might get them to set up the assisted pull-up, if pull-ups are something we're touching on today. If it's a big group, I'm gonna keep it a bit easier. I might get them just to do some kettlebell or some dumbbell rows, one single-sided, double-sided, whatever. Or I might get them to do some banded stuff, or even some cable rows, it doesn't matter. Something that's warm, moving, and relevant to what you're trying to teach that day. Your mobility drills then, again, thinking about the muscles above, below, and around, I might do some, again, overhead stretching. I might do some bicep releasing. I might give my wrist and elbow some releasing as well with some on the floor stretching without palms down or palms up. I might do some forearm stretching. I might do some releases, whatever. In this case, we're gonna say, we're gonna do a forearm stretch, which is where your hands are on the ground like this, and you let the client feel the long stretch throughout their forearm. The linear movement we did was, if it's a PT, we'll just do assisted pull-up or arse pull-up, which is always fun to write down. Arse pull-ups. You might do, for the mobility, I might do some overhead band work. So my band is pulling my shoulder long as I step forward and let my shoulder stretch. So I'm gonna write banded shoulder stretch. Remember team, all I'm doing, it may look like I'm doing something really complicated. I'm just following these rules. I know what muscles are above and below this particular movement, the pull. I know the joints were being used, the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder, the muscles around them, and I'm just creating space, lengthening and stretching or moving that muscle. So if it looks like I'm blasting through this stuff really quickly, it's because I've used this method thousands of times in my coaching career, and I can go bang, 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 and soon you will be as well. But when in doubt, like my mentor made me do, I wrote out I started off with 100 of each of these steps, then 100 bodies of work, which is the main workout, then 100 warm-ups, and then I started actually being able to write workouts in their full complexity, and only then. So that's like 400 reps each, but before I even got close to be able to sit at the table. So do that. Transverse, we're looking at doing some sort of rotation of the pulling movement. So I could grab a resistance band and pull and twist, something like this. I could do a dumbbell row and twist. Again, think sports. I might do a lawnmower start with a band or a weight, something that's creating rotation in my spine, so my shoulders and hips are moving away from each other. Let's do a lawnmower row. I could do a bicep curl with a turn, which is one of my favorites, where they curl up, twist, and lower. So I'm trying to get them to be farmer strong and longevity strong, and I'm also trying to build mass or get the bicep warm. And then I bring it home with linear, where I might do some barbell rows or dumbbell rows, whatever. I might do some pull-ups, whatever. Again, pull is the main goal. I might even do some bicep curls. Not really good if the client wants bigger biceps, and commonly for male populace, just something that makes them feel good and have a bit of fun, which when you've got a really challenging warm-up or day, or something you're making them do something they don't like, perhaps a Turkish get-up for a jiu-jitsu coach, who they need to do it, they just don't like it, you can always end with something fun that is in the linear space, like bicep curls. But again, that's other thinking. Loose and tight, linear, mobility, transverse, linear. We're nearly done, team, I promise. Let's finish off. We've got 2 more to go. Lunge, hinge, squat. Let's bring this back to, we've done lunge, we've done hinge, we've done squat. Let's just do a squat. People love squat, and it's probably gonna be the more common one. So loosen the tight shit. We know the muscles and joints around it. Let's foam roll or pressure point ball or voodoo floss the quad, the calf, whatever. Let's do calf. I love doing the calf for the squat because a lot of people have tight calves and it restricts their squat movement. And that's a very generic statement, team. So that's not everyone, but that's a lot of people. Voodoo floss the calf. That's gonna be for about a minute. Team, these 6 steps, it's very unlikely you'll put in a circuit. More than 4 movements in a circuit, it's not common. Because it's without having a big whiteboard and had gone through stuff, particularly in a warm-up setting. I might get the client to do each of the movements and then put it in a giant warm-up, but 4 movements is far more commonly seen in circuiting. That's why we have monster sets and stuff built around that 4 movement patterns. So linear for our, we're doing our squat. So a linear movement is a bodyweight squat. I could do a duck walk, I could do a kettlebell squat, I could do a deck squat, I could do a chair sit if it's a heavier client, I could do a TRX squat if it's a heavier client. If it's an older populous client, I'm gonna do a TRX squat because it's safer. Mobility, squats, hips, knees, and ankles. So I might do a shoulder distraction, which is where you get a band and wrap it around the foot and create a bit of length. So get it pulling against a cage. So ankle distraction. Very good for people who have discomfort or arthritis. Distraction, just be mindful to stay in your scope of practice though. But clients with arthritis is inflammation around things. If we can create space in them, you'll see a lot of arthritic people with hands will actually pull their fingers to create space and length in them. Again, not something I really want you guys playing with, but you can do it for the main joints in a PT setting. So ankle distraction, I might do we love a good standing quad stretch because people understand it and they can do it. Standing quad stretch, you can do a kneeling stretch, have 2 or 3 stretches in your back pocket for each of the main movements, and you will be killer at doing these warm-ups. For your transverse, I might do a duck squat, which is when you come really low and try to squat along the ground. I might do something like a caracosa or a grapevine that people call it, where you run laterally and you twist and turn. I might do the common one we've already talked about, which is a deep squat with reach. Again, when in doubt, think about sports, because sports are very transverse and you can just mimic something within your sport that you can then apply as your transverse. Now we finish it with a linear. I might do a goblet squat. I might do a front squat. I might even put them on the leg press, but not commonly, but you could. I could get them to do a sled. I could do whatever. Something that's gonna warm them up a bit more and is more related to the movement of the day, which in this case is the squat. Hey, goblet squat being a good idea. Okay, let's finish her off, team. We're going to do ground, gait, and crawl. So with this, let's choose something we haven't already done. I love gait. People love gait. Let's do gait. We've done crawl, we've done ground to standing, let's do gait. So let's loosen tight shit. Gait, ankle's always the best bet. So let's foam roll the calf or pressure point ball the foot. That's one that we see all the time, and geez, it's relieving. Do it yourself when you get home, get a cricket ball and run it along the bottom of your foot, stand and walk your foot over the top of it. Never let the client do more than 6 out of 10 for discomfort. That's going above scope, but because it should feel relieving, not painful. For the linear, I'm gonna get them to do a walk. I might get them to walk for a minute. I might get them to jog for a minute. You can use time frames instead of reps if you want. It doesn't much matter. You have 10 to 15 minutes for this form of warm up anyway. For our mobility, we're now going to have a look at creating space in the ankle. So I can do a standing wall calf stretch. That's fun, we love that. For our second mobility, I might do a deficit calf stretch where I put them on a box and let their ankles drop lower than the box. Fantastic stretch for the calf. For the transverse, I might get them to do lateral duck walking. I might get them to do traditional duck squats where they walk really close down to the ground. I might put resistance bands around the ankles so they step and twist, which starts getting a little bit more physiotherapy and exercise phys than PT. But ducks walk is a great one. Lateral walk, so just walking on a side. Caracosas or grapevines, fantastic. And then we bring it back home to linear, which we could do calf raises. We could do sprints. We could do jogs. We could do farmer's walks, which is probably going to be your main heavy movement for a gait day. We could do sled because it is a factor into your gait, although it's both lungy and squatty and gaity. It does all those things. So team, those are a bunch of examples for each of the different types of warm-ups. Let's really quickly double touch on what we've talked about. 2 steps used for quick. It's some sort of loosening drill and then it's got cardio drill. For our 4-step, we're going to do a linear movement, then we're going to do a mobility movement, a transverse movement, and back to a linear movement. This is better for group classes and more commonly seen amongst PTs when they're learning. We've got our 6-step warm-up, which is loosening tight shit, linear movement, 2 mobility movements, a transverse movement, then another linear movement. Really good during personal training sessions and seen by more academic coaches because you can do a lot in that session. Our underlying principles of this session is identify which of the 9 movement patterns your movement of the day falls into, which joint is related to that movement, which muscle is above and below that joint, then tighten the loose stuff and loosen the tight stuff. When in doubt, your 9 movements, I'm gonna bloody harp this into your team until you know it off by heart. Push, pull, plank, squat, lunge, gait, ground to standing and crawl. My joints, my main joints that I care about or are relevant within your scope is ankles, knees, hips, that doesn't start with a Q, hips, spine, particularly the T-spine, wrists, elbows, and shoulders. What are the muscles above and below them? And we're not getting into that. But these are the things we're thinking about when we're doing a warm-up. If you're still with me, well bloody done. This was a big session, but if you can remember 10% of this stuff, team, you were gonna blast out of the water. You were gonna be unbelievable for your warm-up. Keep an eye out for when I release hundreds of examples of these videos that will, not these videos, but of examples of these styles of warm-ups, as well as specific cases you can use for your clients. That is coming out. Be patient. Pass this on, help the PT next to you, and try to be the best PT you can, guys. Let's make this industry way more legit than it is. Okay, love ya. See ya.